A warm hello to everyone, Durud. The overriding purpose of the project is to create a place, an atmosphere for worship. And that worship somehow is mysteriously intertwined and linked to service. And that these two forces work hand in hand. So really, as an architect, what we wanted to do was create a place where everyone would feel welcome. Doesn't matter whether you're religious or not, whether you're of one faith or another faith, that you would feel like this is your temple. And that somehow you would say, what is that? And I want to go in there. And then once you go in there, you feel like this is a place that's serene, that you can be at home with the deepest thoughts, where you could hear in verse or in voice the scriptures from all of the holy writings. And this is a place with no clergy, no sermonizing, no collection of money. And so it's all about this kind of aspiration for universal worship. First of all, I'm a Baha'i, and so for me, on a personal level, this is a project of a lifetime, you can imagine. But even just in terms of aspiration, this is the first Baha'i temple in all of South America. So already that's really big. But it also happens to be the last of the mother temples, the last of these continental temples. So as you can imagine, I mean, over the years, you sort of live with this project. It's taken 14 years to get to this point. You realize that this is, of course, no ordinary project. This is a project which has somehow been miraculous. It's overcome incredible challenges. Well, all of that wasn't just to be different. It was really to create something that would be a place which is sort of deceivingly simple, and yet feels as if it has the aspiration that we were given, which is that this has to be a place which would be welcoming, open, and last 400 years. The thing that's really challenging is that the institution of the Mashghol Asghar, the institution of the temples, is not a small thing. It's about worship being connected to your daily life. And that somehow this idea that you praise God and then you go about your business with high values, that you serve your community, and these two things somehow work together. You begin your day, it becomes the heart of the community, it becomes the kind of center of the community, and you begin your day with worship, and then you go about your life really in an endeavor of service. Now, what that puts on us as architects is that really we have nothing to go on. This is very early in the faith. We don't know what these temples should look like. We know for sure that if it looks too much like let's say like a church, certain people wouldn't want to be there. And if it looks too much like a synagogue, certain people wouldn't want to be there. And so we have to find a form that is, on the one hand, it honors the aspiration, which is that this is some place that you feel this is a place of worship. This is a material structure, Abdu'l-Baha says, that has a spiritual effect. So it has to honor that. In that sense, it has to feel like this is a house of worship. It's not just any place, which is already not so easy to do. When I was at school, we were across the school from a building by Louis Kahn, And I remember I went there one day, and the security guard, he took his hand in a certain way across the concrete. And I remember I could feel that his spirit was moved. And I remember being touched by that. And I was touched by that because suddenly I was aware that really buildings can do that. They can move your spirit. And since that time, which was about 30 years ago, I've been trying more and more and more to find that. What does that? How do you create an atmosphere? An atmosphere which is a kind of a coming together of all of those mysterious elements that create a kind of a total experience. Light. Light is so important. Materials, craft, proportion. Proportion is a mysterious element. Landscape. How the landscape and the building work together. So when you talk about it as building and spirit, I say they're all one. And it doesn't matter to me really whether it's a house or a building which is for a business school. All of those buildings, we try to do something where we can acknowledge that we human beings have a spirit and are what really satisfies us in our work is to somehow lift that spirit. You know, there's this wonderful quotation in the Baha'i writings. It says that a servant is drawn unto me in prayer, and if I answer his prayer, this is Baha'u'llah, I'm paraphrasing, but it says that if God decides to answer your prayer, which is already very interesting, you can pray, but maybe your prayer will not be answered. But if He decides to answer your prayer, your very being, the pillars of your being will become illumined, because that light has found its home. And I was thinking about that as I was thinking about this project, how we could somehow reflect that concept in the design of a temple. That, in fact, it's not light going through, but it's light being catalyzed, light being embodied. And so you see that the design of the temple is really these two layers of material with a very light steel system between, so that the light can in fact hit one layer, and then some of the light passes through the structure and kisses the interior. So the outside is this new material that we worked with a glass artist in Toronto. So the cast glass, in fact, grabs the light and holds on to the light and becomes alive with the light. And then some of that light passes through and kisses the interior, which is this translucent stone, this veil of stone, which took us 3 years to find the right stone. And when it kisses it, the stone becomes just alive with light. And you feel the kind of magic of, and the mystery and the power of that relationship, which I think when you feel something like a prayer touching you, and you feel like it does bring life into your very being, you're trying to say that, you know, in a way, light is a very powerful metaphor for something like that. But the other part of this, which you'll notice, is that the wings swirl, they move, and there is this very intentional swirling around the center. And if you look at images of the galaxy, for example, or in nature. And frankly, in so many of the Baha'i writings, there's this idea of movement and stillness, and movement about a center. And this idea that things revolve and move and torque. And I hope that when you go into the temple, you'll see this movement and how it all twists around the center, which is an oculus. And the oculus is, of course, this perfect ring. And this ring that binds all of the wings together. And really that's kind of a symbol for the ultimate purpose of this temple. And this idea that all the religions are in fact one, which is, I think, one of the great things that Baha'u'llah has given us, is this idea that all, in fact, the religions are not disparate, they're not separate, they're in fact one. And if you look straight up at the oculus, you'll see that all of the wings are held together by this oculus. If you take away the oculus, the whole thing would fall apart.